You were a seminary student, right?
I was.
With the end game of being a pastor, a minister, a what?
A college instructor of apologetics or philosophy of some kind, critical thinking, right?
Product of a religious culture then, or what?
Oh, yeah. I saw everything in light of my faith, and I wanted to teach critical thinking in a way that would bolster my faith. It's faith-seeking understanding and some.
Is that an oxymoron?
It is.
You're teaching critical thinking skills about something that you take on faith.
Yeah, see, Norman Geisler has written over 60 books on apologetics and this, that, and the other. He has a book out called Come Let Us Reason. That's a passage from Isaiah, I think, chapter 1. And he teaches critical thinking. I mean, it's right there in the book. You can look through it and say, well, this is critical thinking. And Norman Geisler teaches it, even though he commits every logical fallacy in his own book. He just doesn't know it, non sequitur, special pleading, begging the question. I mean, and you know it as well as I do about that sort of stuff. So why is it that people can teach those classes and not see the oxymoron type of problems that they're dealing with? Faith and critical thinking, they don't go together, not too easily. So I want to teach people to have a skeptical disposition. I think that's as important and maybe more important than merely teaching people to be critical thinkers.
Have you noticed that it's faith with my God, I need evidence for your God?
Well, they're not treating their own faith as they treat the other faiths that they reject, and they don't treat it like an outsider would. They treat it as an insider. Now, how do you become an insider if by an outsider's perspective you don't actually, you can't even cross that that boundary line reasonably? Well, you're born into it, or a significant other, that you trust and love and has some kind of religious experience, and they feel really good in their bosom about it. Well, then all of a sudden you might say, well, you know what, I can go along for the ride as well. And so a lot of people who are converted by some significant other, or they're born into it. Because as an outsider, if you actually looked at these faiths as an outsider, you would never have converted in the first place.
And what changed your mind?
Oh, a lot of different things, but basically, I realized that the evidence wasn't there. Basically, even though I had studied at some of the highest levels that you can for theology and philosophy, and even though I didn't really doubt my faith at all much earlier, I had all that information in my head that was just laying there, say, dormant, if you will, until finally, everything I've experienced and everything I've learned ended my faith. It was a combination of all that. You see the hypocrisy in the church. You see a lot of things going on, and supposedly people's lives who have the Holy Spirit living within them, and this Holy Spirit is supposed to help them, but you don't see any evidence of that. And you see churches split over the color of the walls or the carpet. And I'm sorry, if you really believe this, there are people going to hell. If you really believed it, and you're worried about the color of the walls. The ladies are disputing. They're having a big dispute about what kind of food you serve. Are you serious? So all that sort of stuff. I mean, all of it, everything I've experienced, everything I learned, ended in my faith.
I saw a church that, I don't know if they split, but there was a huge division over the color of the hymnals. Pews over chairs just the weird stuff. And then, of course, at the higher levels, you get into, do you immerse when you baptize, or do you sprinkle? Is it water? Is it oil? Is it this practice or that? The very basics of the Christian faith seem sort of up for grabs.
There's a case to be made that the reason why they believe is because of the community, and they want to be a part of the community. And so in order to be a part of the community, they have to adopt the beliefs of that community. And because being a part of a community gives you security, you have friends and people to help you in times of need. But if you were to ask them what they really believe, they don't have a clue. I mean, what's God to you? Well, He's the creator, and they don't even know anything else about this God, than that. Because they would like belonging, and they'll even say, I'm 100% certain. What they're 100% certain about seems to be the love and the warm feelings that they get for being in there.
So this is the God of a beautiful baby born, or rainbows and lost car keys, and kind of this culturally invoked I don't know, happy thing in the sky kind of thing? Or
Well, yeah, it is cultural. It is cultural. You can find snake handlers in the Appalachians, you know. Why? Why don't you find them in Boston, Massachusetts? Tell me, please.
I'd pay real money to see snake handlers in Boston.
Yeah, and you find the bastion of Scientology out in Hollywood. I don't understand, but why? Why? You know, because it's culture. You know, it's cultural, and yet they'll defend, you know, these beliefs, these intellectual beliefs, very strenuously. And the best reason I can come up with is that they like the community they're a part of. And if the community shuts you off or cuts you off or ostracizes you or you know, you're done, that happens. And when that happens, there's a lot of people who decide to reevaluate their faith for the first time in their lives. It's called a crisis, and it does have its effect. And because the beliefs are not founded, you know, not well founded.
Sometimes people say, something bad must have happened to you. Right? You've obviously been wounded. And I used to blanch at that more than I do now, because I think, you know, from time to time, it does take sort of a cage-rattling event to get you to reevaluate everything you once assumed, right?
I agree. Not always. There are people who just simply reason out of their faith. I mean, that's all I could, you know, understand from that. I mean, they just simply are rational people. And they read a book or they hear a lecture and it makes them think, and they do that. But in my case, the delusion was so strong, it did take that kind of a crisis, a community crisis, you know, to make me reevaluate all my faith. And all the information I had from my PhD work and studies came crashing in on me. And all of a sudden I started listening to it, and I started entertaining it, and I started thinking about it, you know, for the first time in my life. I remember there was a teacher in high school where I was a substitute teacher for a little while. I took over her class while she was sick or away, I forget now. And she told me about a crisis that she had of her faith. And she said, I read everything I could get to deny my faith at that point because of this crisis. And she said, I just couldn't, in the end, reject my faith. Well, she didn't know what I did, because I had some higher level studies, and you know, I had that information lying dormant there somewhere, and it was easy to do at that point.
So now you are a hell-bound heathen.
I am.
You
I'm not
you
afraid.
are enemy of God kind of thing. I mean, in all seriousness, though, you have walked away and you have produced a lot of literature and a lot of work. The challenge is your former faith. Flesh that out. What are you doing?
I backed into it. I had a lot of people question why I walk away from the faith. So I put out a self-published book to give to friends and relatives and people in my community, and to answer that question. I was the president of the Ministerial Association in that little town of Angola, and I was quite active, well known, and so all of a sudden I don't believe anymore, and they wanted to know. So what brought me to come out was The Passion of the Christ, that movie that Mel Gibson produced, which is inaccurate in many ways. And I wrote a little letter to the editor of the newspaper, and I said, you know, there's really a lot of things in that movie that bother me, but one of the most important things was why Jesus had to die on the cross in order for God to forgive me. You know, and I wrote a little letter about the reasons why I found that problematic. And all of a sudden, I didn't realize that I did in a way, but I didn't realize the complete fallout. You know, and I got calls from ministers, come to my church now because we'll save you.
You're totally on their radar, right? Now you're a pet project.
Yeah, right. They want to have a notch in their belt, like, yeah, we saved this fledgling preacher. So I wrote a little self-published book about it, and I put it in the local library for people to read, and it also went online, and it got attention online, and I did not realize the implications, but then because it got attention, I improved upon it and improved upon it, and because I didn't anticipate a national audience, you know, or international audience, I just was focused on, you know, helping them to understand, and so I kept beefing it up, and Prometheus Books picked it up as Why I Became an Atheist, and now it's in its second edition from Prometheus, which doesn't happen too often.
John, it seems so basic. I mean,
It does.
why would a God who can do anything and everything require atonement for our sins? Why would he require a sacrifice or torture? I mean, he doesn't require anything, right?
I'm sorry, I can't forgive you, Seth, until I beat myself up or my son. As soon as I'm done beating my son up, then I can forgive you. This is insane.
It's insane. And then, of course, somebody floats back to free will, and you're in the circular thing, and it's maddening, right? It's maddening.
Right. Yeah. And if free will does matter, and I think belief is involuntary. I mean, I don't think you can believe different than what you actually do.
You don't choose to believe in gravity. You just believe in gravity.
I mean, you try to jump out of a window unless you want to commit suicide. I mean, then you'll know. But it just seems it's just insane. It's just insane to think that somebody had to die in order for God to forgive. I mean, it's insane to think that. So I wrote that little letter, and it propelled me, and I got attacked. The Christians don't apparently like being questioned. And
the devil's whispering in your ear, John. I mean, now you're working for the other side.
So when they argue against me, I find it challenging to argue back. I find it challenging to see if I could say something better than others have said. I mean, I don't say I, achieve that too often, but I went in and I dove into that conversation, discussion, debate, and I just wanted to find out how much I could improve upon the arguments that led me to reject faith, and I did the best I could. I am doing the best I could.
Are you meticulous? Are you one of those people? I mean, is he meticulous? I'll ask the gallery back. Does he just dwell and obsess?
He's definitely committed.
He's committed.
Passionate. I'm a passionate man. I asked Daryl Ray just a minute ago on the lawn over there. I said, "Is it such a thing as an addictive personality?" And because I think maybe I'm. If there is one, I am, and I'm very addicted, passionate about what I'm interested in. He said, "No, John, I know you don't have that personality." I don't know exactly what he meant, but I am pretty passionate.
When I came out of the faith, I remember being obsessed. I mean, people would say to me, "You're obsessed," because I was devouring books, I was reading, I was watching, that's all I wanted to talk about. I felt like I was making up for lost time, And that's waned, but it hasn't waned all that much. It's the thing I really want to do, And I don't know, you think that's because you and I just spent so many decades immersed in it? And
we're atoning for our sins. I baptized people, I married people, I buried them.
Just our penance, is that it?
I have people who are now in the ministry who credit me with having inspired them to be in the ministry. So I don't know what else to do.
Now, your post-religion life, though, has produced what? How many books? What kind of work? What are you doing?
By the end of this year, it'll be 10 books in 10 years. And you'll find that the very first book, Why I Became an Atheist, was polite and respectful. Then the Christian Delusion, the very word, is a little less respectful. And my tone has changed because I'm becoming more and more jaded. I'm less interested in trying to reach to Christians because they're not interested in paying attention, most of them. They can't be reasoned out of something they were never reasoned into. I asked Bob Price, I said, I'm becoming more and more jaded as I get, longer and longer in this. He says, me too. I've noticed that with him. I think if you delve into these subjects and they're as bizarre to you as alien abductions or the flying spaghetti monster or the pink ink unicorn, I love the invisible pink unicorn best, then it's really hard to take them seriously. So my last book, the one I'm working on now, is called Unapologetic. And the subtitle is Why Philosophy of Religion Must End. And I'm working on it now, and I don't have a lot to say about it because of that. But I'm really, really excited because it's the most jaded of all. And so if you want to recommend my books, well, it depends who you are. Let's say you have nothing to do with religion, you hate religion, you just dislike it, then the last book.
Find the stuff closer to the end of the chain.
And if you're a Christian and you want a respectful conversation, then the first one. And in between.
Now, but I have to take issue. I mean, I was reasoned out of my faith.
Good.
And it does happen. But I totally understand the frustration. I always invoke Dale McGowan, who says most people in the religious faith have a greater desire to believe than they have to know. And until that switches and their desire to know becomes greater, you're pretty much screwed, right? Because you're just wasting your time.
Right.
was it Sam Harris who said, "What logic do you use to convince those who will not accept logic or logical arguments?" And I'm like, that's absolutely probably correct. I mean, if someone's arguing emotion or what they've assumed or comfort
or from their community, we like this community.
And the church does community well, right? I mean, they're amazing at it. Which brings us now to the challenge of, if we ask people to leave, like, this is delusional, right? Mm-hmm. This is debunked. It's safe to say the Bible debunked, right? Would you go that far?
Yeah. Oh, sure. It's rubbish. It's historical rubbish. It's just nothing that can't be accounted for by the times in which those documents were written.
So if we're asking someone to walk away from that, though, are we at a point where we have to offer them something in return? Like, if they're leaving a church, they're essentially leaving a family. It's a challenge for many people because they have such an attachment.
It certainly is. I don't think that we have... I know that there's Sunday churches, there's Sunday atheist churches.
Those assemblies and those types
of things.
That's right.
They're trying to offer that. I don't think that we can have the same... I don't think as atheists we can offer the same things that a fantasy land offers. Because precisely it's a fantasy land. To see a poster of Jesus opening his arms for a war-beaten pilgrim, as I've seen in homes and in churches, and the resting of this man in Jesus' arms in heaven, we don't have anything by far that can offer, that same kind of comfort. And
I would choose some other god. I need a more badass deity.
Well, yeah, all right, I get you on that. Yeah, sure. But whatever it is, whatever the fantasy is, the reason why it's a fantasy is what attracts us to him. To it. And
I think, though, what I'm referring to is the sense of many people, let's just say the church says that it owns the concept of community. And I think human beings being communal creatures to begin with, right? We are relational creatures, are we not? Right. So what the church has done is it's co-opted what humans do naturally, and it said God gave them that.
That's true.
So now they leave the family, and they're sort of twisting in the wind, quite often isolated and ostracized. It's got to be challenging for them,
Right, and so I'm not saying no to human need.
I get it. I understand. You're saying reject the fantasy presents some real challenges for those who were attracted to it in the first place.
But there are like you. I'm an active member of the Democratic Party where I live. I'm a delegate for the state of Indiana, and I support Bernie. Although I think he's probably going to lose, and I'm sorry about that. But that's a community. There's a Moose Lodge. There's other kinds of lodges. There's a golfing community. I play pool. And if later you want to challenge me for $20 a game, then we're on.
I'll get back to you on that. Yeah.
But I play pool. There's a pool community. There's a lot of kinds of communities that provide friendship and caring. There are social agencies to work on behalf of the LGBTI community and. Against racism. I mean, there are social active communities that are doing that. We can get involved with communities on any level we want to, even going to movies, a movie meetup community. I just don't see that adding religion to the mix, is something I need. I know people go to Unitarian churches where they also promote some faith sorts of things, and that's just not me.
I get a little cynical about the church experience. Well, I'm very cynical about the church experience, but when you see the manipulation that takes place, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I did it.
Conditioned response.
I didn't know I was doing it, but so much.
I mean,
so much.
There was an ebb and flow to the message, right? There were climaxes, mini climaxes. There was storytelling. You were going for the heartstrings. The way you formatted the praise and worship before you spoke. I mean, it's just conditioned response.
I purposely tried to make people laugh and cry in the same sermon, and I did. I succeeded. I patted myself on the back for making them, cry and laugh hilariously.
Now, what's a Loftus sermon look like? I mean, were you pounding at the podium? Were you walking around the platform? Are you?
I actually have a sample sermon. I posted on my blog, Debunking Christianity, not long ago. I don't know when the timestamp of this will go, but the title of the post is my last sermon, my very last sermon, or John Loftus's last sermon, and it is my last sermon, and you can see that. Watch or listen.
Now likewise, today there are many people who are living a lie because they cannot face themselves or their past. In the extreme form of it, there are some people who have adopted a different identity and are living in communities under assumed names. Look around you, maybe there's one here. There are fathers who, rather than pay child support, move to different states. Now, far less extreme are those people who attend church and are afraid to tell others who they really are. Because they're afraid we will reject them rather than help them. They are afraid to express their doubts, their troubled marriages, their sins, their past, because they feel somehow we will condemn them. So like Moses, they live secret lives too, sensing a loneliness inside that only a genuine, loving relationship can draw out of them.
Even when it's done with a sincere desire to communicate effectively, there is a real pattern to it, isn't there? I mean, you
it's
bring
a cadence sometimes,
you
but
lift them up.
I wasn't really the cadence type of preacher, like bam, ba, 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 ba. But I did have 2-3 points that I wanted to hammer home, and one major point, with a couple 3,
Did you do the altar call at the end?
I did.
Just as I am. You baptized at the end of the service.
We did. Yeah. Anytime somebody comes through.
What, you have an actual... I've seen it done many ways. Some people have the baptistry to the left.
Well,
to the right.
I personally like to throw them. No, we lay in the wire.
Very liberal church, apparently, yeah. How's your life now without God? I mean, come on, you have to be miserable and sad.
I am.
It's just
I am. Yeah, it's bad.
You don't strike me, actually, as miserable in any way.
No, I really am happy. I was thinking about that the other day. I get to do whatever I want. I went to the Indy 500 for the first time, even though I had never gone to see it, having born and raised in Indiana. Now think about that. I said to myself, I'm going. So I went. It was just a marvelous...
What does that have to do with Christianity? Like, as a Christian, the Indy 500 was forbidden, or that you've actually made sort of a life pledge to go and pursue more of your dreams?
I have other things to do, now. I don't have to, no, it wasn't a stricture of Christianity not to go. I went to the Grand Canyon recently. I mean, I just love traveling, and I'm doing some of that, and I love people. Did you know that people are the most interesting specimens?
I'm slightly terrified when you finish this sentence. We'll see how we're doing here, okay? Specimens in what sense?
I find people interesting. I mean, I actually do. Whether I like them or I don't, whether I agree with what they're doing or they don't, I find them and their actions, I find it's interesting to study them. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, not claiming to be one. It's
people watching, man.
I'm a people watcher.
I'm amazed at how much stuff I didn't realize I was missing in the faith. Like the ability to swear, without guilt, without shame. Jesus Christ is such satisfying.
Hell yes.
The alcoholic beverage, which of course alcohol in my home is, if there had been a beer in the fridge, there would have been an immediate intervention. They would have called somebody in for prayer. And
I forgot, did you say Baptist?
My father was Baptist, my mother was Pentecostal, so I got a taste of both, right? Yeah. We got the tambourines and the speaking in tongues on one side, and we got the frozen chosen on the other, and went to a Baptist school. But I mean, everything was a sin. And don't get me started about sex. I mean, sex was just...
Repressed, very repressed. Right?
My mother would say the word sex and her face would twist up like one of those trees in The Wizard of Oz. She couldn't even say the word without looking hugely uncomfortable. But now, you look at it and you can say, I can approach being a human being in a much more liberated way, right?
Right, exactly.
It's a beautiful thing.
Right.
Does John Loftus have a philosophy on life, or do you eschew the word philosophy outright? I mean, what do you think?
No, I do. I say it different ways. I mean, I don't have a one line or anything like that, but be happy, enjoy. You only have one life to live. Live it to the hilt. Be good, be kind, be gentle. Not that everybody or anybody can live up to any of that, but that's, those sorts of things, and I really am passionate about arguing. I'm not always the same as I am in person, because I'm making a concerted effort to try to disabuse people of their faith. And anybody who gets in my way, I can be kind of harsh.
Well, so you're kind of the antithesis to Bogosian and those cats who were very much a Socratic, lead with questions, don't get people on the defensive.
Well, I'm jaded now too. Remember?
So are you the guy with the sledgehammer out there, and you just go right after them?
No,
I mean, those people have their place, I think.
Well, I'm jaded now. No, I don't do what Peter Boghossian does, because what I read in his book, he likes to engage people, Christians, with conversation. I don't do that hardly at all. I write my books and my blog pieces, and they're there for you if you want to read them. If you don't want to read them, then on a personal level, I usually don't walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, you're a believer? You shouldn't be." I never, ever. Now, sometimes when somebody in a public place says a prayer, I might, as I walk past them, before they eat, I might walk past them and say, "Prayer doesn't work, but you can do a good deed in my name." A little bit of that. But other than that, I don't argue people personally out of their faith. I don't actually care what any individual believes. Although I do care about what the masses do. If you understand, you are insignificant as far as the total believers out there, and so I'm not going to be able to convince you by wasting my time talking to you unless you want to read my books.
So it's for you, it's the stupid people in large numbers thing. This is the most terrifying thing.
This person's not going to get changed by my stopping to engage him in a conversation, so let me leave him alone and I'll just focus on people who are interested.
So if I'm reading you right, then for you, it's not necessarily quite as much about making them feel safe and getting them in a place of happiness where you guys can have thoughtful exchange that goes on. For you, it's healthy for this person to be challenged in a belief that they consider to be unchallengeable. I mean, would that be an accurate way to frame it for you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
it's healthy for them to know that I think this is bullshit.
Right. Now, if I'm on a plane and people ask me what I do, I'm a writer. What do you write? If I don't want to bother, I'll say I write about the philosophy of religion. Oh, okay, and they go back to sleep. Because again, I have a safe place. My safe place is my personal space. I can't argue this day in and day out. I can't argue this day,
Well, that's interesting because
hours.
Balance is hard for activists.
I have to leave these people alone and just focus on online people, focus on masses as I reach them, and I just get along usually in life,
Well, I'd like to send everybody to a resource where they can find your work and learn more about you. Where would I send them, John?
There's two places, actually. My blog is debunkingchristianity.blogspot.com, and it has a list of my books and what I'm currently thinking and saying. And the other resource is on Amazon itself. I frequent there a lot. I've written and edited several books. So you look up my name, John W. Loftus, on Amazon, and you'll find them there.
I love your work. I get to quote you and sound really smart. I've incorporated your stuff into my speeches and all these other things that you just do. Honestly, you're a very good communicator, and you're very good at sort of putting the pieces together in a way where we can perhaps use them in our own discussions.
I admire your work as well. I mean, I think you're getting messages out to people who need to hear them. I honestly do. So,
this movement needed a dumbass who took 30 years to figure out that donkeys couldn't talk.
It took me 40.
And that's what I do.
You're smarter than me.
You and I can just drink our sorrows away.
I like that. Yeah, sure.
Honestly, though, the fact that we were so immersed and we were such longtime believers, I don't know about you, it's helped me now be able to not just speak against it, but to empathize with those who are still locked in it, right? I mean, you relate to them a little bit better.
Well, you can be personable and at the same time not like the delusion. So it's hard to do that and not offend them. I understand that. It's hard to do that, but because I used to be one. But the longer I live, the less I empathize. I get irate when there are people, Christians, who will come to my blog and they will say the same thing over and over again, like a one-note song, and nothing I say, nothing anyone else says convinces them otherwise. Well, they get on my nerves. Why don't you go somewhere else? I'm thinking, and sometimes I say it because you're not really listening. You call them trolls, but they might be actually sincere people who just don't know what else to say. So, but by and large, I'm very respectful of believers who are sincere and they're inquiring and they want to know.
Yeah, you and I, we are shooting this interview in the shadow of the Reason Rally. and we just happened to sort of cross paths. You know, when I see the guys walking around with the big signs, you know, the Ray Comfort types and the Westboro types and the You're Going to Hell types and whatnot, I have no sympathy. I don't even see them as victims. I just see them as, I always phrase it as theological masturbators, right?
Exactly. I said to Ann earlier, I said what they're doing is they're masturbating.
They are self-gratifying, right? They are going out to defend a God who is invincible and all-powerful, who would need no one to defend him. But they're doing so, and then they're going back to their lair, and they're patting themselves on the back.
Yeah, well, didn't we do a good job, you know? Woohoo! When people find out I'm an atheist, sometimes they'll say, well, I believe in Jesus, because they feel like God wants them to say that in my presence, like it's a test of faith. Like, can you say that in front of an atheist? Well, I can. I believe in Jesus. Well, nice to hear that. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Is there any one trick tool? Is there? I don't want to oversimplify, but I mean, is there a method in engaging believers or exploring the discussions about Christ and Christianity you find most effective?
Well, this does dovetail into what Peter Boghossian is mentioning, because he does mention my work, and it's the outsider test for faith. It's treat all religious, faith-based beliefs the same, you know, on an equal playing field, and treat them all as you would to treat the beliefs you don't accept. I mean, as an outsider. And I mentioned that earlier. Because as soon as you do that, then all of a sudden you can, they have a hard time maintaining their faith at that point, because they would say, well, you know what, why are my beliefs true and yours are false, when we arrived at them from the same means. And the means would be mama's knee, I was born and raised that way in a culture like that. And so then what makes my beliefs any more reasonable and evidence-based than the beliefs of like a Mormon, a Jehovah's Witness, a Scientologist, a Muslim, and they have to like wrestle with that, and then you can press home the argument that that's because they're all faith-based, and they all lack evidence for the same reasons, and that you can. It opens the door for a discussion. How would you deal with your own faith if you were not born into it? Would you actually accept it? Now, a lot of them will bite the bullet and say, yes, I would accept it, because, after all, delusion.
What else are they going to say?
Well, yeah,
of course I would. If I'd lived in Saudi Arabia, of course I'd be a Jesus follower.
But I would be wrong to believe anything else but Jesus now, because why? Because I was born into it. What? It sounds like circular, reasoning. Yeah. But the outsider test for faith. Look at your own faith as if you were never born into it. I mean, honestly, do that. And I will help you. See, I will help you look at your own faith as an outsider, and ask questions of how you would actually think if this is the first time you ever heard about a Trinitarian God. I never thought about that as the first time I ever heard that. It sounds bizarre. But you try to get them to think that and to see that. Or, that the second person of the Trinity came down and was born in a virgin womb and spit out a God baby, a God-man baby. It's too familiar to them, but still, if you ask them to think about it as if that's the first time they ever heard of it, and how would you actually go about defending that? Well, the Bible says so. Well, Muslims say the Quran says so. What more than that do you have? Those sorts of questions and those sorts of discussions, I think is good, and hopefully it's good enough if they are interested in reasoning about it.
I'll make sure and link to those resources in the description box. John Loftus, thanks for a great conversation and for all your work, man.
Thank you so much. Yourself.